everyone, and welcome to another video by Fairly Critical. I am your host Jacob, and today we're looking at the dominance of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Superhero films have really dominated the box office for the better part of 2 decades now, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been the head of this genre for most of that time. With Marvel announcing its plans for Phase 5 at San Diego Comic-Con a couple weeks ago, Disney's cinematic giant showed us that it has no plans of slowing down. But Marvel isn't the only one who had some news to share, as HBO Discovery's investor call gave some DC fans something to chew on as well. It seems DC may be poising itself to make a real run on Marvel's dominance. When we couple that with the changes we think we are seeing in the taste of moviegoers and the drop in quality of Marvel content this year, we think there is a real threat to that Marvel may lose the crown of box office supremacy. Before we go into our reasons for thinking this way, I just want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Your support is such a blessing to the channel, and we really appreciate it. If you do like this video, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on our next stuff. But also, please share this video with anyone in your life that you think might also enjoy it. Without further ado, let's answer the question, is Marvel's throne at risk? There are fans of the MCU who think that Marvel can do no wrong, and what I am about to say is tantamount to heresy amongst the devout. But there has been a drop in quality in Marvel products since coming out of the pandemic. Going strictly off of IMDb ratings, for every high point like Spider-Man No Way Home at 8.3, we also had a low point like The Eternals at 6.3. While I don't necessarily agree with every IMDb rating, it does give us a pretty good idea of where the average viewer is at. And while a score of 6.3 doesn't seem that bad, it is far from the level that we have come to expect from Marvel movies. If we look at the entirety of Marvel phases 1 through 3, its IMDb average comes in at 7.44. The average of the 6 movies currently released in Phase 4 is 7.07, with only Spider-Man No Way Home beating the previous average of 7.44, coming in at 8.3. It is also worth mentioning that the previous worst movie in the MCU was The Incredible Hulk at 6.6, but that was replaced by The Eternals at 6.3. While a drop in quality is to be expected coming out of the phenomenon that was the Infinity Saga, it could not have come at a worse time. What I mean by that is that the market is becoming saturated with superhero movies and shows. Between Amazon, Disney+, HBO Max, Netflix, cable television, and of course theaters, there's been so much superhero content since Batman Begins released in 2005 that there is a real risk of the populace just getting tired of it. The superhero genre isn't the first to have a heyday that ended either. It happened with war films after the 40s and 50s, westerns after the 60s and 70s, and over-the-top action films in the 80s and 90s. A genre of film typically enjoys about 20 to 30 years of just total dominance and then fizzles out. If that's true, then Marvel will be on borrowed time starting in 2005. It's not to say that you won't still get these movies. Every few years, we get a really good war movie or a really good Western remake, typically. But those movies have largely left the social zeitgeist, as you just don't see multitudes of movies being released every year or television shows to accompany them, like you do currently with the superhero media. Aiding in this saturation is the sheer volume of content that Marvel has pumped out to us in the last 2 years. If you count each Disney Plus show as one movie, then Marvel has released 13 separate projects in just 2 years. By the time Phase 4 ends, that number will be 15, as She-Hulk releases on Disney Plus this coming Thursday, and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever comes out in theaters in November. For reference, from the start of Phase 1's Iron Man in 2008 to the official end of Phase 3 with Spider-Man: Far From Home in 2019, the MCU released 23 films. That is a dramatic escalation in material. It's even larger when you take into consideration that about every 3 to 4 episodes of a Disney Plus show is roughly equivalent to the runtime of a single MCU film. While the typical IMDb ratings of most of the Disney Plus shows were actually greater than that of the cinematic releases, a good chunk of them were still below the 7.44 rating of the previous phases, and the sheer volume of shows that they are putting out, or planning to put out, really risk the oversaturation of the market even further. Saturation with material that is largely forgettable or unnecessary. While not every Marvel movie in the Infinity Saga is a winner on its own, they all contributed to the sprawling narrative of the saga in one way or another. Marvel had a clear vision and a well-implemented and adapted plan to get us there. So far, Phase 4 has not given us that impression. Marvel has certainly put a lot of irons in the fire, with Shang-Chi's rings being some mysterious tech, the Eternals dealing with Celestials, the Guardians completing their space adventures, Doctor Strange dealing with multiversal madness, the Earthbound heroes of the Disney Plus shows dealing with the after effects of the blip, and Kang being free to do whatever he is going to do in Phase 5. There's certainly a lot of things to keep our interest, and while I can see how some of these threads will intertwine, it is difficult to envision that all of them will. That is not to say that Marvel won't be able to pull them all together some way, somehow. It just right now seems like a huge chaotic mess with no clear end. Especially when Marvel makes announcements like Agatha Harkness getting her own show, something that I really doubt fit into their larger narrative and was forced on them by their Disney overlords after Kathryn Hahn's portrayal of the character in WandaVision turned out to be such a big hit with the fans. Since there are no rivals to the MCU at the moment, pumping out content of average or below average rating is not really that big of a threat to Marvel. During the Infinity Saga, only DC stood a real chance to steal some box office numbers from Feige's Fantastic Fiction. But they bungled and botched it by rushing products to market to compete with the MCU without any clear plan, compelling a director who had an amazing story that would have perfectly fit with the narrative already established by their films to completely change the ending of said story, and allowing a director who doesn't understand or really even like Batman and Superman to make Batman and Superman movies. Screw you, Zack Snyder. After the debacle that was Justice League and the first Suicide Squad, I certainly thought the DCEU had taken themselves out of the running permanently. However, their decision to eat a $90 million loss and not release Batgirl has made me think twice. Now you may be asking, why would their decision to take a $90 million bath on a failed DCEU project give me hope that DC might be turning things around? It has to do with the reasons behind the decision to scrap the project. For the sake of time, I will not go in depth on all the reasons that I have, but I will link a video in the description of this one to a video that has a really good summary of it. Basically, the new CEO of HBO Discovery is beginning to focus on the quality of the DCEU, and that gives me a little bit of hope for that franchise. If you did not know, HBO, the company that owns the DC movie rights, and Discovery merged a few months ago. As happens when two companies merge, massive corporate restructuring has occurred. This includes a new CEO with a new vision on how the DC brand will be handled moving forward. During an investor call 2 weeks ago, the new CEO announced a 10-year plan to rework the DCEU. Before you ask, it was not like a Marvel Comic-Con announcement. It was not an expansive timeline where they showed us all the movies and television shows that they're going to be releasing to us over the coming years. Rather, it was just the announcement of their intention to put a Feige-esque persona in charge of the DC brand and bring more organization and structure to the DCEU. Something that has been sorely lacking in their previous efforts. If you would like more detail over that investor call with regards to how it will affect DC and fans of the DC universe, I will put a link to a good video on that one as well, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to explore it any further. Now, obviously, we do not know if this plan and from this new CEO will actually make a difference. It may be too late for DC's cinematic dreams, but if they do succeed in putting out quality products in an expansive narrative like Marvel did with the Infinity Saga, and Marvel continues to lose quality in favor of volume, then the DCEU might have a real shot at taking over Marvel's throne, especially if the superhero genre is in fact fizzling out. In the race to milk whatever money is left in this market, the one who produces the most quality will win out over the one who just simply produces the most. And even if DC doesn't end up making the kind of quality that will be able to rival the Infinity Saga, their efforts will only continue to saturate the superhero market and hasten the end of the genre supremacy. This will allow other movies that are non-superhero related to have a really big chance to steal box office numbers from the MCU giant. But that is just our conclusion that we have come to. What about you? Is Marvel sliding in quality? Do you think the market is becoming saturated? Do you think DC will actually pose a serious threat moving forward? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Again, thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe this video and share it with all your superhero friends and all your super villain enemies. We will be back next week with a full movie review of The Invitation. I'm very excited to see you all back here then. But in the meantime, have a blessed and wonderful week. Thank you.